right, let's go ahead and go live. Hello, hello. Go ahead and pop questions into the chat box. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk about random stuff like running my D&D summer camp. I actually don't know if audio is coming through. I'm going to assume it is. Looks like it is. All right. And I'm also going to try to bring up my Airtable demonstration. Let's see if I can do that. Oh, this is going to get fancy. This is going to be the stuff. All right. Bringing up my D&D tracking template. And let's go ahead and see if I can share that. To camera. And find, where did I do with my, there we go, live stream. Okay. So we're going to chat in this live stream about a couple of things, and one is going to be how I run my D&D summer camp. This is going to be sort of a prelude video. Ooh, let me get all comfortable. This is going to be a prelude video to an actual larger video about how I ran my summer camp. And the backstory about all this is that in 2018, the summer of 2018, I ran a summer camp at Lake Washington Girls Middle School here in Seattle. And it was sort of a, like, I'm trying to think of the right way to describe it. It was really something where I didn't know what I was getting into in some ways. And it wasn't a bad thing at all. I knew that I didn't know what I was getting into. Let's put it like that. I knew that it was a big unknown, and I knew there were going to be a lot of kind of hairy issues that I had to deal with. One of those, for instance, was the fact that you have students for 6 hours a day and 5 days a week. So we ran for a full week. That's a lot of time. It's a lot like you're running a school. You're running like, you have all the problems of a school and not necessarily all the resources. So, for instance, like you have to keep all your students safe. You have to make sure that you have insurance for everybody. You have to make sure that you know everybody's immunization status, that you have all their emergency contact information. You have to make sure that when they come into the school that they're going to get fed and watered. The school during the summer was super, super hot. Welcome, new viewers. Thank you for joining me in this experiment. I'm just talking about my summer camp that I ran in 2018. I was talking about some of the problems and issues that we've had. Not problems, I guess, but like challenges. Challenges, they're all challenges. So some of the bigger challenges that we had were really things like the insurance, just making sure that all those like T's were crossed and I's were dotted. I had I had one parent who asked me do you mind if I send our international student that is staying with us to your summer camp? And she was from France. I don't speak French. I don't think anybody else in the summer camp spoke French. And the girl's English was okay, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say that she was always super comfortable in English, but I also think she had a great time. And we worked really hard to accommodate her. But you're just gonna get you're gonna get stuff like that all the time. You're gonna get people who are asking like, "Can I send my student who has no allergies?" And then you're gonna get them on the first day this happened. On the first day of summer camp, you're gonna find out no, actually, they have a horrific bee allergy, and they carry an EpiPen everywhere. But no food allergies, so it was okay. Let's see. So the stuff about summer camp, the issue really is that, and please feel free to post questions in chat. The issue about running a D&D summer camp that you're going to face, the biggest issues are going to be not D&D stuff. They're going to be all of the like, how do you run a tiny school for a week? How do you keep kids entertained for a week? How do you, because entertainment is like a thing, right? You have to keep their attention and focus. And you want them to go home and report, wow, that was an awesome summer camp. So we would start off at 9 a.m. And at 9 a.m. in the morning, this was like the hottest week during summer in Seattle in a long time. So the mornings were already like in the upper 80s. And everybody would arrive. We'd be out on the front lawn. We would take advantage of like the few moments of shade that we have around the school during the day. It was hot. And I would have like a circle time. We'd all get into a circle and we would have a circle time icebreaker. And the circle time icebreaker was super fun. We would do things like, I'm trying to think of some good examples. Some of these I stole from Game to Grow, by the way. Adam at Game to Grow do this cool one where they will, and this is one that I did as well. I say like, what's your character's favorite ice cream? And what's your favorite ice cream and what's your character's favorite ice cream? So what you're doing there is you're doing two things. We'd go around the circle and they'd say like, well, my favorite ice cream is chocolate chip and my character's favorite ice cream is cockroach. Ugh. My favorite ice cream is mint. My character's favorite ice cream is also mint. And what you're doing is you're taking a temperature. You're saying like, okay, how close are you to, how much do you identify with your character? How different from you is your character? And in what ways is your character different? Another thing, so I was, every morning I would wake up and I would be like, well, what's our icebreaker going to be today? And a lot of these I had a lot of stuff planned out, but you also, as von Clausewitz said, no plan survives first contact with the enemy or students. And so I really had to like toss out some things that I thought might work because I was like, oh, this crowd is they're not going to be into this activity. So I did things, for instance, one morning I woke up and I typed out a bunch of character, like types, like theater types almost, like old woman, queen, king, guard, shopkeeper. So I typed up all these like sort of typical NPC descriptions you might have in D&D. And then I typed up some things that they had to say. And so they would pick basically like a character type and they'd have like a little speech. Oh, actually, and the first time I ran this, I didn't have a speech for them. That was actually a mistake. But so I gave them like, okay, you're a king, you're a queen, you're a guardsman, you're a shopkeeper. They drew these little slips of paper. And then they had to get up in front of the group and basically, instead of it being like silent charades, they would do vocal charades. And we would have to guess who they were. Now, the problem that I had at first was we went around the circle. We had like 20 girls doing this, and they would say things like, "Well, my subjects, I decree," and of course, people have a list in front of them of the possible character types, and they would guess, "Oh, you're a queen." And it was from the language they were using. So what I have to do is actually find a way for them to read something which is more neutral. And I've since run this activity and done it where they had to read like a somewhat neutral statement. And it's harder to guess then, which is what you want. And you want them to be doing things like exercising intonation. I'm still kind of workshopping this vocal charades, or I'm not sure what to call it. I guess vocal charades for now. But I'm still workshopping that a little bit and trying to figure out exactly how that's going to work. But I love it. It was a great activity for a group of students. So I'm trying to jumping around a little bit. I'll come back to icebreakers when I remember some of the more awesome icebreakers that we had. But sometimes we would all sit in a giant circle. Sometimes we'd sit in smaller little groups. And I'll see if I can bring up some of the photos from the event as well from the summer camp on my fancy mechanical keyboard here. So feel free to post questions, by the way, in chat. This is just like a loose, very free-form discussion. I realize that. It's a little bit of an experiment. I'm wearing kind of my wrinkly black sweater right now, but it's cozy because it's so cold and I'm snowed in here in Seattle. So let's see, what else did we do in summer camp that was super cool? I tried to break things out into playtime in the morning. So we would do like icebreaker, we would do D&D play, then we would take like a little snack break, and then we would do either start off with some other activity like an art activity or a story creation activity, or a guest would come in. We had Kate Welch come in, we had Jen Vaughn come in. Jen is amazing, Kate is amazing. And then we would also do something like that again in the afternoon. We'd do play, and then we would break for some other activity. Usually, I guess by the end of the day, we were still engaged in play when parents showed up to get their kids. But you can't just think like, I'm going to play for 5 straight hours. And also, oh my God, the other problem that we had was it was like 95 degrees in the coolest room in the building, and higher than that in some of the other rooms. I remember Kate Welch came in and we were all upstairs, and this was like the first or second day, and it was getting really hot, but we hadn't figured it out yet. And we were up in this room, and like just as like it was just like it was a perfect storm. Sun started to stream into the window, and like it was like that scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where the guy's face melts. Like we were all just like and sweating and gross, but the girl, like, it is a testament to like how amazing Kate is that she came in and like held these melting girls. She just held them entranced for like an hour, and she talked to them and answered questions. And of course, like half the questions, by the way, are like cool questions about how like Kate's job, and the other things are like, is Mr. E telling us the truth about this object in the game? Like there's only one D&D world or game, and like Kate has this, she has the list of secrets, and she will tell on Mr. E. Luckily, Kate did not tell on Mr. E. She did not give away any of my secrets. So anyhow, so we would do that. We would have we'd have people come in. Now, the other thing is about how many students we had, and I'm actually kind of misremembering. I want to say where it was like around 20. I almost need to see the photo again, but I think it was more or less like 20 odd students for the summer camp, and it was a lot of kids. And now, of course, like every time I run a D&D thing, I have this experience where I think, oh my God, I can't do this. It's too many students. And then you find a way to do it, which I think is basically life, right? So we had all these students. And at first I was planning on it just being myself and one other person. So it was me, and I early on recruited Kat Kruger of D20 Dames podcast and who's a writer and an amazing person, and has since had a baby. Actually, she was pregnant in the middle of this summer camp, and I was so worried about, like, I mean, you know, my wife and I have 2 children, so I know how that, like, I know how babies happen. And I know that women are tough, but I was also like worried about like Kat being in this like super hot oven of a building. So she was there, I was there, and then I think we probably could have run it with 2 people, but we were lucky to have Hadil come as well. And Hadil, also known as Twitty on Twitter, also amazing. She ran, the girls still talk about her as a DM. They were like, oh my God, we loved Hadil. She was an awesome dungeon master. So we had 3 dungeon masters running this show. Welcome, all viewers, by the way. New viewers are popping up. Please go ahead and chat into chat. Let's see, in the chat, it says automatically block spam messages. I'm kind of unlock the spam message business in chat right now, and hopefully it doesn't just go to hell in a handbasket. We'll see. So go ahead and chat things. I think that they just show up for me here. Well, where was I? Oh, yes, I was talking about dungeon mastering. So, okay, I have 3 groups. I've split them out into three clusters. I personally chose that. I did not let them choose themselves. I think that you as a person, like you as a grown-up, should use your big brain, and you should divide up the girls as you see fit. I think that that is super important from a like a social emotional growth perspective. Otherwise, you just get girls who know each other sticking together. Oh, by the way, see, I'm sorry about this. I'm also using the term girls all the time, which is neither necessarily always the right term, even at the girls' middle school I work at, nor is it an inclusive term for the summer camps that you might run. So I'll try to say students instead. Um, but the students that know each other will tend to clump together, obviously, and you sometimes you want to break that up. You want to mix things up. You also want to have a little bit of an eye towards like mixing maybe younger students with older students and what have you. It's tricky. It's probably the hardest part of the running a D&D club or camp or class is figuring out the correct groupings. But once I did that, once I split up into three groups, then we had this issue, which was how do we figure out what we're going to run, what the game is that we're going to run, and we decided that we were all going to run more or less the same adventure, and that we would meet up at the end, and it was super fun. I loved it, and we did meet up at the end. I don't think I would do it again like that in the future. I think in the future, if I run a D&D summer camp, or if I run any sort of multi-group entity, which we're doing that, by the way, in club right now. We have like 5 groups. But if I do it again, I will just have the dungeon master run whatever they want to run. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, I want the dungeon master to feel comfortable about whatever game they're playing, whatever adventure they're running. I want them to feel like this is my adventure. I can do it. I want with it. I am not constrained. And there's always, especially when you're running an adventure and you're thinking like, what is this other person doing? What is this other group doing? We all have to get to the same spot. I have never played Adventurers League. I imagine that is what Adventurers League DMing feels like, and it feels a little too constrained for me. We kind of got around that in this cool way, which was also like it felt a little bit like, like watching. Journalists in a high energy newsroom in like from the 70s where you're all like clustered around a typewriter and like urgently trying to figure out a story. Like that's what it was with Hadil and Kat and I. We would like sit around before and after play and we'd be like, what happened in your session? Where are we? Where's your group? What do they do with this NPC? Da 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 da. Oh my god, you made that NPC a what? You did a what with them? And like we would try to incorporate the changes the other people were making into our games so that there was some feeling of cohesion. And the other funny thing is, of course, the students love. Can you tell, by the way, that I like to talk with my hands? Oh my gosh. I'm going to start drinking coffee instead. One of the things that the students like to do is they like to talk with each other in between game sessions. This is actually one of my favorite things, because they will discuss in-game activities, and you can metagame with them a little bit, because you can provide information to one group of players and have them tell another group of players. And yes, I understand that you're breaking that fourth wall a little bit, or if you're letting players talk with each other, it is metagaming, and that's not necessarily a great thing. Or it can be like, well, their character doesn't know those rumors, but the players know those rumors. I don't care about any of that. I think it's super fun to feed information between the groups this way. The girls loved it, the students loved it, and it added a lot of value, I thought. And even if it's stuff that their character doesn't know, for them to hear like, oh yeah, we met that same NPC, that old lady that runs a tea shop with all those weird doors. Yeah, we met her. And then we went through this orange door, and they're like, you went through the orange door? We went through a green door. What happened? And they love sharing that information. It adds a lot of value, and that kind of narration of their adventures is part of the game. That's part of the adventure. So let's see, what else am I thinking about in terms of running those sessions? Again, though, I think it's too much. It's a lot to ask of a DM. Definitely, by the way, I'm talking about grown-up DMs that have experience. If you are dealing with kids that are running a session, don't put that on their shoulders. For sure, just let them run the adventure they want to run. Give them the support and tools that they need to run the adventure. So let's segue for a moment. I'm talking a lot about summer camp, but let me talk a little bit about not just summer camp, but talk about the class that I run as well and the club. So my life right now, I mean, I spend 40 hours a week like running IT systems and technology and teaching programming. And then as a side gig, I run these like three different, D&D things. And so I play D&D 3 times a week. I play in class twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then I play on Friday nights. And so class is interesting for me right now because last year my D&D class was capped at 8 people. That was with my explicit expectation. I was like, I will run a D&D class with 8 students only if you give me a second teacher that can DM with me. And we have one other teacher. She has experience. She actually played in the club a little bit the first year I ran it. And unfortunately, she's also doing her MBA right now, and she's super busy. And her schedule just ended up not matching up with mine also. And so I ended up with 8 students last year alone and freaked out. I was like, oh my God, I can't do, how am I going to run a party of 8 students? This year, this is the problem with assumptions, right? Is I thought, okay, they're going to give me 8 students again, but I can deal with it, right? I've got the skills. And what happened is they gave me 15 students. I think it was because we normally assign 15 students, and this year I didn't explicitly say how many I wanted. So they were like, he can take it. And so I showed up and I was like, and yeah, it's ad hoc, right? Like we don't always know like the way that these electives are going to be planned. And suddenly I had 15 students looking at me and ready to play D&D and one DM, which is me. So now I actually have been running for all 15 students for the last several weeks. And at the same time, I have two. At first it was everybody, and now I've taken 2 of the students. So I'm down to a much more manageable 13 students and 2 student DMs. And those student DMs are like, they're sitting next to me, or they're sitting like together next to me on the side sometimes chatting with each other, but like chatting about D&D. They're not like off talking about like off topic stuff. They're like, oh, so like all of a sudden last session, let me tell you what happened. It was hilarious. I had these 2 students, the student DMs, and they're not DMing yet. Like I actually asked them, I'm like, okay, are you guys ready to jump in? And I don't think they're ever going to say yes necessarily, but they're going to say, we're not ready. Right? They'll say like, we could try, but they're a little nervous, right? Like I think about the anxiety that we feel as adults DMing for the first time or just DMing anytime. I always feel a little bit of anxiety, and that's like a positive thing. But so these students like are kind of being thrown into that, and I'm really trying to ease them in and give them some tips and clues and talk to them and say like, hey, like right now, you see what's going on? This is what I'm gonna do. And then they feel super special because they're like, oh my God, we know the inner workings now of this, and we have our own, and then they also see it play out in real time, and they see how I respond to that. So if you can do that, I call this dungeon coaching. If you can dungeon coach with your students, I think it's great. By the way, I really have no idea if I'm actually looking at the right chat area. So if you are chatting me and it's not showing up, and I'm not responding to your chats, that's fine. If you're not chatting me, I'm secretly hurt. I'm actually not. But feel free to chat me if you want. So, and ask questions. My son is upstairs on a snow day walking around heavy-footed. He likes to jump around. So if you hear some thumping upstairs, that's what that is. So let's see, what else? So I'm talking about how I run my class, and I'm talking about the 2 students. And the 2 students that are like my student DMs, they're sitting there and they're talking with each other, and they're doing stuff like, all of a sudden they're like, hey, Mr. E, we have a riddle that you can use in this room. I'm like, okay. Like I hadn't planned on using a riddle here, but now we're going to use that riddle. And it's super fun. So I like that kind of dungeon coaching. They're gonna pop it. So I've kind of split the group now. I have like half the group is above ground out in the forest, and the other half is underground in this weird chamber. And there's all these like, there's like this cursed dinner on this table, like a banquet, as you find underground occasionally. So they've sort of split out naturally into 2 groups, and they're going to take one group, and I'll continue to play with the other group, and hopefully that'll be more manageable. And they're actually going to tag team, so they're going to be two students working together to dungeon master. I suspect, just knowing their personalities, that one of them will talk more, and the other one might be sort of like more of the planning because she loves to plan, and I'm okay with that. I think at some point I might try to split them apart so they both have to do the planning and the talking, but they feel very like this is a very comfortable way for them to ease into it. They love to support each other, and then we have little secret DM meetings before we play, and we'll usually do a couple of those every week. And they'll come in and they'll talk with me and they'll ask questions and they'll ask like, how do you run combat? How do you do this thing? How do you make these things happen? So yeah, so that's my class, and let's talk a little bit about my club. In my club right now, we are running 26, 7. I have to see the most recent sign up might be even up to 28 or 29. So it's a lot of students. It's a lot of students if you want to maintain a high quality of play. And let me unpack that term a little bit. So what do I think of as high quality play? So I've talked about this a little bit on panels that I've spoken on, and I've talked about this online. I tweeted about this yesterday in response to somebody discussing some D&D club activity issues with me. The reason that I started the club initially was because I was promoting. Oh wow, I have some crazy reflections on these glasses. The reason I started the club originally. Sorry, can you see I'm working the reflection angles here? Wow, this is a tough one. The reason I started the club originally was because I was really talking up D&D to one of my students. She got super interested, and I was really worried that she was going to go play at a friendly local game store and have the unfriendly experience. Like, I mean, it happens, right? Friendly local game stores are sometimes creepy local game stores. So, by the way, I don't know if my audio is bad or good or what's going on with that. I hope you can hear me talking into this giant microphone. Yeah, I think that's a microphone that's working. It was a little bit of a live stream test, you can tell. So, let's see. So I'm talking about, went straight out of my head. I was talking about friendly local game stores and creepy local game stores. Yeah, the reason that I started this club was because I wanted them to have a super high quality experience. I'm like, okay, yes, I've sold you on the idea of D&D. Now I am going to give you a great experience. I'm going to dungeon master for you. It's going to be like the best D&D ever. I will make that happen. And you're going to love the game. And that was successful with my first 6 students. Totally successful. I think it's been successful so far with everybody, knock on wood. But I put a ton of effort into making sure that happens for everybody. So they've come away loving it. They embrace it. They like on Friday, I heard like 4 of my students were like off playing by themselves because it was a snow day. And I was like, that's success, right? Anytime a student takes something they learn in school and they start playing on their own, that is success. But that really requires, like, to build that experience, you do want them to have, like, it could go either way, right? And even if, like, let's say it's students running for themselves, it can also go either way. Like, any student run activity can turn out well, or it can turn out mediocre, or it can turn out badly. Same for grown-up run activities. But I have no control. I have less control when it's a student running the game. And I certainly think a lot about this, and I think about, how do I give them both the freedom to run their game as they see fit, which is not the way I would run it. You have to accept that as an adult as well. You have to accept, like, these students are going to run their own show, and it will be so different from the show that you run. There is, like, sometimes I hear reports of crazy murders that happen in the games that my students run, and I'm like, oh my God, I would totally redirect that energy in the game. I would be like, do you want to horrifically murder these people? But I think back to when I was playing as a kid, and we would, of course, like, it's a game, and it's a game. Kids have good reality testing, so I feel like it's okay that they are experimenting with those boundaries. If I felt really deeply, truly uncomfortable with something, yeah, I would be like, oh, okay, maybe you guys want to dial that kind of play back next time. Yeah, and you should feel comfortable having those discussions with your students, and I think you can do it in a way which they hear. But other than that, like, what I try to do to give them the tools to run great games is make it super easy for them to run a great game. The Sly Flourish books have been a huge help there. Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master is like our textbook. I make sure to really walk them through the chapters. I'm like, okay, you're going to read chapter 1 now. We're going to talk about chapter 1 now. And we're going to figure out how you apply chapter 1 to your game. And then chapter 2. So that's been a big help. Just be otherwise what's happening, and I think you see this and we've all done this, is you will have kids who start planning out their whole world, which is super fun, and either end up railroading their players because we've all done that, or they end up, just not being stressed out because they feel like they have to do that every time. They have to plan out everything, the economics and everything about their world in order to have a good game. And of course, they don't need to do that. So having the kids run the game is both great. It also throws a wild card into the mix, and you don't always have the same results in every group. And some groups get bored, and some groups feel frustrated, and you have to deal with that, and you have to figure out how to switch out DMs or support them when that happens. So let's see. If you have any questions, just put them in a chat. Otherwise, and I'm not sure I'm seeing them, so that might be my mistake on how to run that. Let me talk a little bit about my database that I use. I think this is super helpful, and actually qualified the other day. Let's go back to, there we go. Overlay here. Oh, there I am. Whoa, this is getting fancy. All right. You get the full fancy live stream from me today. Yeah, so anyhow, Airtable. Airtable it's just a database, and I'm going to show you sort of like not by group. We're just going to look at just a list of everyone. Airtable is like, and it's a database which is a lot like a bunch of spreadsheets that are linked up together. For those of you who are not super into databases or database nerds like myself. So you can have relations between different tables, different fields. This is sort of the spreadsheety view of my list of players, and this is I use this live. I use this all the time, and it is super helpful. Let me turn off. Mr. E is going to turn off the audio on his phone. Live stream tip: make sure your phone's off. Okay, just like I say at the table, no phones. So this is what I use with my students, and it is my lifesaver. I would be going crazy and not be able to run anything without using this. We have a list of player names here. By the way, if you're into Airtable already, or if you're into databases, this particular field that I create for the player names is a function field, and it actually combines their first and last name, and it substitutes their nickname, which is a hidden field here, substitutes their nickname for their first name if they have a nickname entered, which is really, especially for students, super important. I guess for grown-ups too. And then, let's see, I don't have emails entered for all the players, but I do, of course, for my students, and I send out, for instance, like group emails all the time. Let's see. Notes, player photo. You can see that I link to whatever character they have. So in Airtable, this is super easy to do. You just look here and you find the character that is listed in the characters table, and you can link between the two. And then the nice thing is that I can actually take all of these characters and create. So I have my grid view here, which is like a spreadsheet view. And then I can instead look at it as the player character view, and I print these out. And I used to print this out just for myself. And again, I don't know if you can see this here. I think I can zoom in. Maybe not. Oh, there, I guess we can. Okay. Did that come in? Yep. So you can see that I've got their... I have their incredibly handsome jawline here, and then I've got the name of the player character, and then I have the player itself, And spotlight skills, in this case, it's empty. Although for Bard, I guess it would be, his spotlight skill would probably be brooding. He is an incredible brooder. Summary, human, ranger, chaotic neutral. By the way, don't at me about that. I know that's probably, he's not, Bard was probably not chaotic neutral. And then a summary of their abilities. And let's get out of this zoomed in view here. And the neat thing about the this card view is I can say, instead of looking at it as just the abilities, I could instead look at just their modifiers. And so you can see that down here now, I've switched out from the abilities view to the modifiers view, and it shows me just what their modifiers are. I think, whoa. Hi, what's going on? Okay. Shortcut keys, know how to use them. Okay, so the cool thing about that is just you can customize this to really fit your playstyle. And I'm going to turn off Spotlight. Oh, no, Spotlight skills we want. And we'll bring back... Or I also have Stats Plus. That's my hybrid view where it shows both the stat and the modifier. That is a little too much information for me. My brain does not process stuff that fast. So I generally just look at the abilities, and I can more or less remember... and also just by looking at it, right? Obviously, Bard is going to want to do a dexterity check, right? He's going to be the guy that you want to put into a situation to say, hey, like, you know, jump over that cool thing that you just, or jump over that river of lava. And that's, so again, this is just a way for me to have in front of me a card, and we do this with like 3x5 cards or whatever, but it's a way for me to have in front of me like the information I need to give each player a super epic moment. And that could be over here, for instance, with Bilbo Baggins as an example. We're going to zoom into this guy. So Martin plays Bilbo. His spotlight skill in this case is Speaks Draconic, Halfling Rogue, etc., and they're his abilities. So having him speak Draconic for me is great because, or having that as a spotlight skill, that reminds me, just when we're playing and we find, I don't know, an engraved tablet, it can be in Draconic, and it can give Martin a great experience at the table. The other cool thing I found, and I actually need to create like a new view for this. One of the nice things about Airtable is you can create these different views. So I have my PC cards view, the grid view. I have a form for adding a character, and I have a view of just everything, which is just like this. I'm going to go back to my player character cards view, and I'm going to create a new view. And this is PC cards for players. So my players have actually asked me for these cards. And the reason that they wanted that is because they can't remember each other's names, especially in the class. 15 students all playing around a big table. Really hard for them to remember everybody's name. So in this case, what I'll do is I'll give them a version of this without the abilities and without the spotlight skills. And now they have just the player name, the player character name, and a summary: human, ranger, elf, monk, halfling, rogue, etc. Really nice for the players to have that. So Airtable is great. This is my tracking template. If you want a copy of this, let me know. Message me, tweet me, email me. You can go to ethanschoonover.com, and all my contact information is there. And I will happily share. I'm trying to publish this as a template, but I'm making some changes to it. But I will happily share this over Airtable, and you can clone this database, and you have your own copy of it, and you can use it for your own games. Another thing, I have all these tables in here, which is, you see here, we've got the groups. So I actually have like my after school club, my weekend club, and I can, so I have, these are all just the different groups of players that I have in my different activity sessions. Summer camp could be in here, what have you. And sessions, every time that we have a play session, obviously this is not filled out because this is a demo database. This would actually be quite long in my real database. But every time that we have a session, then I can say like which group that was, and I can make notes about the session, and I can say who attended it. It's a way for me to track, and just, especially this being a school activity, it is somewhat important for me to track some of the things like participation and how people are doing. I can track events in the game. So for instance, I have this here. It says rescue of Daisy from the bandits, dungeon crawl, captured Bill and Luke in the forest. That's actually something that happened in the class recently. It happened in which location? Widow's Forest. So anytime that I have a cool event happen in the game, I try to write it down, because you can, asking your players, do you remember what happened in our last session? As though you, of course, the dungeon master, remember, no problem. You just want to hear it from them. That works most of the time, but that only really works like session to session. And sometimes I want to go back and I want to say like, oh yeah, that thing that happened like 3 or 4 weeks ago, who did that involve again? So I might say like, let's do one which is lost little Jacob in the catacombs. This also happened. Poor Jacob. I'm sure he's fine. And that will say that the location, well, we'll just call that... I don't have a location for that yet. I need a location. So I'm going to actually create catacombs under Widow's Basin. Under Widow's Basin. And it says no matching records. You can search in real time on Airtable. It's cool. So I just created it. So that's the catacombs under Widow's Basin. And the NPCs, we're going to add Jacob. Jacob was involved, so I'm just going to add a new record called Jacob. So this is a really easy way for me to both add that stuff in real time based on an event, or I can go into the NPCs now and I can see, like, there's Jacob, and I can make a little note about him, and I can say, lost his kitten, Mr. Fluffy. And then I can also see, I'll zoom over here a little bit, I can see the events that have involved that NPC. So I can see that, for instance, they lost little Jacob in the catacombs. And so it gives me sort of just a thumbnail sketch of what's going on with each NPC. I can look at it based on NPC. I can look at it based on events. These events can also then, you can see that I can associate them with a specific session. And that's all I need to do. So I can say, for instance, this involved my weekend group, and it automatically fills in the group over here on the right. So I filled in this. I said, this is the session that we played, and it automatically fills in which group. And the nice thing about that is if you have a long list of all the different things that have happened, you can filter by your group, and you can say, like, show me only events where the group contains, in this case, weekend. And now I'm looking at only the events that involved my weekend group, my weekend club. So Airtable, it's super cool, totally recommended. I'm using the free level, the free tier. It works great. I'm underneath, as long as you're under like 1,500 records. So that's locations. I think I showed you this. You can add like the cool photos. We could add like a quick gallery view of this so I can see all the different locations in my game. And parents. Oh my God, parents, so important. I use this all the time. And this is like emergency contact information for parents. So for instance, you know, if we got stuck in traffic one day during summer camp because I was driving the girls to do a dangerous shooting of bow and arrow at an archery range. And we were coming back and we were just stuck in traffic for an hour and all the parents were showing up at the school and the school was empty and people were going to freak out. So I just quickly SMS'd everybody using the contact information right off my phone on Airtable. It's a great tool. So I endorse it. And we'll come back to the chat. So I think that I'm going to wrap up this live stream. Hopefully the audio was like coming through and things were good. I'm going to try to head out into the snowy wasteland that is Seattle right now. But if you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter. I'm always happy to chat. I'd love to do some sort of like maybe a meet, like a hangout where we actually can video conference with like-minded and interested parties. So if you're interested in doing that sometime, talking about like school clubs, school D&D, that would be awesome. Let's figure out how to make that happen. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll talk to you online.